Everyone, welcome to our Alumni Asia panel. This is our Asia Alumni Spotlight today. So, as a little introduction, my name is Patrick. I'm actually the enrollment advisor here at Hult, and I'm, really excited to host and discuss this and introduce our guest today, actually. And so just a little bit about our agenda. Feel free to type or ask any questions if you do have any. We'll have a bit of a Q&A session at the end of the panel. But, what I wanted to share is, this conversation is, designed to provide a bit more value and insight into both prospective students and students that are, potentially or incoming students as well, that to help them begin their journey. We'll get a first-hand perspective from someone who has been, there and her, our students' experience before, during, and after Halt. And, it will definitely, maybe help when you are there, how to make the most out of the time there. So, our panelists, which, she'll share a bit more later, but she joined the Hult MBA program in 2007, where she's gone on to work in technology consulting and, energy digital organizations in Malaysia. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Delina Patail. Thank you so much for joining, Delina. Could you please give us a little introduction of yourself? It'd be great to, learn a little bit more.
Thanks, Patrick. My name's Delina Patail, as Patrick mentioned, but you can call me Delina for short. And currently, I'm back in my own country in Malaysia. I'm pretty much happy here and running a full-time job, but at the same time, I have my own two side gigs. I opened my own personal company in a way to give back to the community, very much focusing more on tech, but assisting from a business mindset. How do we manage to make it very practical for us to feasibly launch the tech initiatives for the commercial team?
Oh, great to hear. And it seems like you have quite a few different branches and things you're doing, especially since graduating there. Just, winding back, I guess, pre-Halt, before you were joining, it'd really be great to hear, what you were doing at the time and, what really motivated a shift for you to actually, do a master's or do an MBA.
The first thing was that pre-Hult, I was very much a programmer. I was always focusing about on the tech side, right? And one day I realized I can't even communicate properly to the management and to the business because a programmer's mindset is very, very 1010 if you think about it, very digital. But in reality, we are very diverse. We need to be able to communicate. So that's why I wanted to go for a master's in business administration. But at the same time, I'm very wary coming from the tech background. I want something that is very pragmatic, that actually really works. I want more of projects. So as I was searching for universities or postgrad areas for MBA, Health attracted me, and I wanted to understand how can I do it better. And it helped that I saw that quite a number of the professors actually have working experience as opposed to be just being an academician. So it helped a lot.
Oh, that's great to hear. So, you're more coming from a technical background and looking to enhance, like learn more of the soft skill sides, I guess. So that's great to hear. And so you did highlight that a bit, but what about Halt did you sort of what stood out and why did you end up going towards or choosing Halt at the end? You did highlight a bit about the professors, but what else sort of swayed that decision?
Well, I was a bit nervous about Hulk because back in 2007, it's an unknown brand.
Mhm.
You don't know Hult as how it is now, a well-known global brand. And in fact, it's not even called a university, right? It's just a Hult International Business School. But what attracted me and what made me felt great was that somebody actually introduced me to the Hult alumni. At that time, it was very much the alumni was known as after the Little School of Management. So it's a very different alumni, and they were sharing with me, hey, this student union is very strong, but not
Mhm.
only that, the professors are very strong. And I'm very pleasantly surprised because during my time when I went and do my master's, I realized if not all, at least majority of the time, right? The professors that we had, they are actually working professionals, working part-time as professors. I mean, like, how great is that? Because it makes me feel assured whatever that I learn, I can actually really implement it. It's not textbookish. Somebody's doing
Mm.
this for real.
That's great to hear. I mean, yeah, it just seemed like the professors were a big stretch. And I guess jumping into that, were there any specific professors that really stuck with you that, you really do have that you do remember from your time there?
One of my favorite, and I remember even my previous seniors, right? And even after that, one of our favorite professor, and do look out for him if he's still in Hult. His name is Professor Denaf. He taught us strategy. And it was so great because he actually taught us about strategy, and he was talking about premium versus low cost carrier and how you shouldn't mix them up together. And one of our student, my batchmate said, "How realistic is this? I mean, it all sounds fine and dandy, right? It's all frameworkish. It's very consultantish. How practical is this?" He had a lot of skepticism. But the funniest part was that it was a mic drop moment because Prof. Naf actually said, "Hey, I live and breathe this. I do this for a living. I have to make sure it works. So what I'm teaching you, it really works." And everybody just kept quiet. But because of that, it's so great that this particular friend of mine, even after he went out to the world and he became a top SME, right? Especially on supply chain, he's been in Gartner. You would probably see him in the news, even in US. And now he's actually also a part-time professor in Hult, and you should search for him. His name is Korai Kose. And it just struck me because of that lasting impression. Even back in my hometown now in Malaysia, I'm always thinking about, hey, we always talk about there's a gap between the grads as well as the working world. How can we reduce that gap? And hence the reason why I love about giving back to the community. It changed my perspective about just chasing for career. But hey, we can actually do both at the same time.
Oh, that's great. I mean, yeah, it's really interesting. A lot of lessons learned there. And actually, that is a great point in the sense that, professors having actual hands-on experience with their teaching, you can actually gain experience from someone who's actually done it, if that makes sense. So, that's great to hear. Really interesting story. And, just with it, with Hult, at the time when you were at school, do you remember what it was like? What was it like when you were at Hult at that time?
It was crazy. I had no idea what I got myself into because the hub that time was so small. It's just that Boston campus. In fact, it's even smaller because it's just the two floors within the current Hub Boston campus. And there was only 100 students. There was only a
Wow.
hundred of us. It was already considered quite big, and it's just two classes. So because of that, there were a lot of things that I had to have an adventurous mindset because you have to search for your own accommodation. I heard now it's totally different. That's great.
Mhm.
But that time we had to figure out everything by ourselves. So it teaches you to learn about the country very differently. It
Mhm.
matures you up because 1% is of local, 99% foreign. In fact, in my batch, it was only the max that you can find only 5 people within the same country. Everybody else out of the 100 is from different parts of the world. So you really get to really immerse and understand the different culture. What you may consider as taboo, it may be not a taboo to another person, or the vice versa. It was amazing.
That's great to hear. And also a lot of adapting you needed, I guess, when initially moving. It really does seem like you had to learn a lot from the experience when you first joined. As you mentioned, maturing, finding your own place. As mentioned, we do have a visa team now in place to help with visa applications pre-departure to sort of help with that. But it's very interesting to hear, when you were first there that that was sort of your experience. And okay, and so for you, were there any sort of standout memories or stories that you had, from your experience there?
one of the things that I do want to highlight is about help teaching you about empowerment. So when the first time I met one of the seniors, right, before I went to Hult, they mentioned to me, hey, Delina, look out for the student union. Student union is very, very strong. And you should feel empowered because you'll get to learn from it. And true enough, during my time at that moment, can you imagine? It's like a new startup kind of school, right? Where you have professors teaching you. It feels more like a professional training ground. But there, I started learning, hey, you're talking about junior here, whose aspiration is to be a manager, mid-management onwards. And I get to learn from them. You are empowered to suggest and come up with proper justifications. And you can see who knows where it's going to go. So for during our time, somebody suggested during the era of the buzz about globalization, especially about the rise of China, somebody said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we have a school field trip like what we used to do in high school? And I said, okay, so where do you plan to go? I thought it's Chinatown. The person actually came up with the idea, hey, let's go to China itself. And I said, really? Okay, let's form a team and start coming up with idea. How do we propose to the school? How are we going to go to China? It was so interesting because along the way, we managed to not only get management approval, or in this case, school approval, right? We went all the way to China. We learned so much on the ground, going to the factories even in Beijing and Shanghai, and it just empowered the next batch of students who were there and said, hey, I want to do something like that. And the next student says, how about we have rotation? Can we actually be there? And the fact that Hult actually is part of EF is just wonderful because EF is everywhere. And that's how we started having China. And now, as you can see, we have everywhere in terms of Hult campus where it makes sense.
Wow, that's a really great story and actually very like cool to hear sort of like the foundations of that. I mean, nowadays we have what we call city seminars, as you mentioned, where students are able to go for, weekend. Now for this year, they're going to Los Angeles, Barcelona, Mexico. And, it definitely could have stemmed from that trip there from China. So, we do thank you for that because it was a really great idea. So it must have been a lot of fun. Do for us, we also do in terms of student empowerment. I feel like that's a great point that you brought up as well. In the sense that, nowadays, of course, our students, we have a lot of, structure in place, but our students have the opportunity more on campus with their clubs, their societies, where these are all student run, that are now flourishing and growing on campus. So, that's a really fantastic story to hear. That initial, I guess, city seminar or rotation was started from you guys, like an idea off the whim. So that's a very cool point.
That's great, but I wouldn't take the credit on my batch, right? It's the
Mhm.
previous batch who told us, hey, you can do something. And we just spread the news. And it's just great to see how it has grown so much. I don't know of any other university. I could be biased towards health, but I don't know of any other postgrads schools, right? That empowers you to, hey, look and see what kind of changes can you make apart
Mhm.
from the typical structure that you're stuck with. So this
Mhm.
is a huge, great opportunity. I've always thought that health is very strong on entrepreneurship, and this just shows how you can actually even build intra or entrepreneurship.
And thank you so much for sharing that. That's a great story and really, really interesting to learn. So, I guess moving on, we did hear more about your pre, post, and during Halt. We get to know sort of what happened after graduation. We know you're in the Boston campus, so for you, once you graduated, what was your situation? What was your next move, initially speaking?
Well, I graduated, as you can know, it's during 2007, right? And 2008
Mhm.
isn't that great. I'm not so sure about the rest of my friends because they wanted to stay in US. Some of them decided, hey, I'll stay for a few sh for a short stint and come back. But I've always thought about coming back. The reason why is that I had this in mind. If I stay in US, probably you've already seen it. But if I grab the ideas from US, can I implement it back home where my country does not know anything about it yet, right? There's huge
Mhm.
opportunity. It's like the salesperson who's trying to sell shoes in Africa last time when Africa does not know about shoes. So that was at the
Mhm.
grand scheme behind my mind. And that's the
Mhm.
reason why I came back. And I was
Mhm.
able to really, really switch. So coming from a person who used to do programming since she was 9 years old, all the way until 20, right? I was actually able to go into consulting.
Mhm.
And that requires a huge mindset shift because you're talking about coming up with strategic blueprints, right, for the
Mhm.
government as well as the GLCs. And not only that, I explored all the way into research houses, talking about
Mhm.
mega trends. What are the things that will impact the country or even the industry? I managed to move from one industry to the other, oil and gas and all those. It doesn't matter because the basic foundation about thinking from an organization's mindset first that Hult has taught me has allowed me to be versatile and move around.
Wow, that's great to hear. Okay, so a lot of them going straight back to Malaysia, going back into the tech side, but with a lot of like a different focus. That's great to hear. And do you think you during your time at Hull, do you think it helped shape your career path, or did you take any lessons from your time there into your career after you graduated?
Definitely. If you think about it, I've given you some of the examples, but the other part, and maybe I'll sneak in a little bit, right? Another one. One of the professors, Professor Rob Bogosian, do you keep an eye in terms of business leadership? If you've never gone through any of this in terms of soft skills, it's really important to know about you yourself, have an awareness about your characteristics. What I thought was interesting is I was doing a bit of spring cleaning the other day.
Hmm.
I found my old help notes. I can't believe I still keep it. But what was interesting was that when they did the DISC or MBTI assessment, I realized for my case, it didn't change that much. So the advice I got from Professor Rob Bogosian, who was running that course that time, I realized I can still use it even now as I have forgotten all about it.
Hmm.
So it will open up for some people. Maybe you will have different experience, but for me, no matter which courses you go, so far I find it very, very useful, especially which you decide to practice on.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. Okay. And, it seems like a lot of, yeah, it helped you improve in that sense. And that's really good to hear. Okay. And, is there, for you, just out of interest, it seems like as you were in the class together, everyone was quite close. Have you still kept in touch with your alumni or, your batchmates, to this day?
Definitely, we definitely have our own WhatsApp group. Before
Hmm.
that, we didn't have. We used to go via, Google chat and all those, or via emails or Facebook. There was also the start of Facebook, so we kept in touch via Facebook. It's amazing to see how everybody have grown in
Hmm.
their own way and capacity. But because I'm a mother also of kids, I don't really hang out with the alumni so much, but I'm very much in touch with my batchmates, specifically within WhatsApp. And the other one is on and off whenever anybody is in Malaysia and they want to meet up. I do meet up with them on and off.
That's great to hear. And just to let everyone know, the way I was introduced to Delina was actually through her batchmates in Singapore. Still mentioning her names, so it seems like they are still very close, still speaking to this day. So it's it's really great to hear. And so, for you, for a lot of students that are still thinking or joining Hult, is there a piece of advice or that you would want to give to someone that's going through the process of if they should join Hult or if they should do a master's degree or go overseas? What's your word of advice there?
My first word of advice is that check the time, check the duration. As far as I know, for the MBA, and I'm wondering whether it's still the same and whether it's the same for the other masters, right? You only have 1 year. And the reason why we are so close knit, my batch is because you are stuck in a pressure cooker. It could be that you finish one semester, the next semester is just over the next weekend. It can be
Mm.
as crazy as that sometimes. So do take it with an open mind, treat it as an adventure, and just remember to make the connection, because that's one of Hult's biggest value. And I feel that Hult gives a lot of return on investment, because even after I have left Hult so much, on and off, I still get this offer. Hey, do you want to go for extra um, courses? And that's just great to have that refresher, because sometimes along the way we forget. And not only that, please, if you still have time and if you're already enrolling, make sure you have a lot of sleep right now. Because once you go to Hult, chances are you're going to start to learn, it'll be your foundation battleground on how to go into the consulting world, and also in terms of parenthood or motherhood, because you won't have that much sleep.
That's a great point. Yeah, and definitely something that they should be keeping an eye out for. With the course being a year, there is going to be a lot of work to be done. And, also a great point regarding, the lessons you take, not, for throughout your whole career. I mean, at Hult here, we also recently have done what we call lifelong learning for our alumni who have graduated, where our alumni are still able to take classes, have a career counselor for any career needs. So, you will have support not just during Hult, but after there. So, it's really great to hear, your story and your advice there, definitely for the students that are considering. So, what we're going to do next is we're going to jump on and see if we have any questions for the Q&A side, for Delina herself. Um, One we have here is for, how was your class profile and, how was your life in Boston when you were there?
The life in Boston, as in, could you elaborate a little bit more? What do you mean by that?
What was it like, day to day living in Boston, especially moving from Malaysia? What was it like, for you to live and be there for a year?
Well, it was my first time experiencing a four-season country. If you have sinus problem like me, you'll realize, wow, I can finally breathe. I can actually breathe through my two nostrils. That's
Yeah.
the biggest thing that first struck me. But the other part is that if you have an open mind, it's great, because there's so much to learn from different culture. US is a totally different culture compared to wherever you are from, especially if you're from Asia. The mindset is different. People
Mhm.
will say, hi, how are you?
Mhm.
Unlike here, we just say hi, for example. And the connection between there and here is a bit different, the way how we look at it. All this while, the kind of things that we thought is polite here, over there, it could mean differently. Just the same thing on what they perceive as politeness may be different here. So
Mhm.
these are the kind of things that you get to learn along the way as you rise up in your own career, right? In terms of management or senior management, these are the kind of small little, as you call, soft skills that you end up
Mhm.
having to pick up anyway. So it's really,
Mhm.
really great. Oh, and be careful, especially if you're from Asia. Chances are, in a way, maybe it's good because you can budget. The meal portion there is huge. I can never finish the whole thing by myself, especially the first half of the year. I guarantee you, it's too humongous to finish. So it'll be great if you have a fridge that you can keep it.
Yeah, you can save one for a lunch or dinner for if you buy one
Exactly.
meal. And also another thing, I guess, make sure you get your winter coat, especially if you're coming from Malaysia, right? Something to keep an eye out. And during your time there, were there any sort of non-academic activities that you guys are doing on campus or with your classmates that at that time?
There is a lot, because if you're talking specifically for Boston, I it was my first time experience in terms of Halloween. It's such a big deal there compared to here, especially in Asia, Malaysia, Singapore, and all those. It in no way beats the Halloween there. Please make sure you take the subway ride, and make sure you go to I think it was I can't remember exactly where. Was it Salem by the beach or somewhere further? because they really celebrate. We do, because of you being in a pressure cooker, for my batchmates and I, we tend to hang out a lot. So we do go for adventures, uh,
Mm.
apart from going for parties on and off. But there's so many things that you can look forward to. Like, please don't forget to go and check Vermont. Oh, that's another excuse that we did based on the project that we had to do. Let's say marketing, we decided on the weekend we must go all the way to Vermont and see Baskin Robbins factory and learn how did they go about marketing, because Baskin Robbins is so strong on the marketing, and that's what we did as our project. So do check on all this and take advantage and turn it into your advantage on how you can actually score in your projects, for example.
That's great to hear. And it seems like you and your classmates really immersed yourself in, not just, the program, but the whole city and, really exploring and taking the time. So it's really good to hear about that. So, it seems like that's all the questions, on our side. But, I really wanted to thank, Ms., Delina for coming on and, expressing her, sharing her experience. It's really great to hear from someone that has, especially started the program, in its initial stages and seen where they've come here. So again, I wanted to thank you so much, Delina, for joining us.
You're welcome.